Mike O'Neill is back, Vice President, Legal Affairs, Landmark Legal, the Ronald Reagan Legal Center. All right, so what we see in Virginia is an attempt to discredit the Supreme Court. The goal is to pack the court with the name of fairness, and that's just a load of malarkey. Hi, Mike.
Hey, Fawn. Good to be with you.
Yeah, thanks to have you back, or thank you for coming back.
Always. Oh, so much fun. I love
I'm
talking
telling
to
you, it's such a morning today. I swear I'm going to beat my head on the wall when I get off the air. I literally am.
No.
People, I don't know if the moon's in a weird cycle or if they're all girls now and they're on their cycle, but they have lost their minds this morning, and I'm over it. So,
what's going on? What's the primary difficulty? Not to get off track on the Supreme Court, we'll touch that. But what's the base?
They're so whiny this morning. Everybody's whining about everything. They're like, "Well, you shouldn't have said that." I'm like, "It's radio. So I have to talk."
Yeah, exactly. And hey, no whining. Well, this is a no-whine zone. We are not whiners. That's the left. They can whine and moan. We get out and fix problems. That's what we do, right?
I was talking about a $24,000 bottle of wine and said, there is nothing on this planet that I would drink that's worth $24,000.
$24,000 for a bottle of wine. Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, it gets into marginal value there. Is the difference between a $400 bottle of wine versus a $24,000 bottle of wine?
Or a car.
Can you tell the difference?
No.
I always like the jokes, not to get too far afield. I always like it when they put there was some scam that somebody ran where they took bottled, just a Gallo, the cheapest of the cheapo box wine. Mm-hmm. They put it in like these barrels and did something to it, and then sold it back to rich, rebottled it, put it out like this fancy bottles and everything. It's a big fancy scam that went on for years, and scammed people and sold it to rich people, and they never knew the difference.
Yep.
It was all packaging and just pizzazz around it. Yeah. Never knew the difference. Famous scam that was run.
I'm sure they were swirling it and sniffing it and talking about the smoke and the butter flavors that they had. I mean, I'm sure they were doing all that, but whatever. Right. If you like wine, drink your wine, but $24,000, you're stupid. I told them to get some TJ Swan stepping out. They'd have just as much fun. All right, so... Back to topic.
Back on the Supreme Court, right?
Yeah. What are they trying to do, Mike?
Yeah. This is part of look. There's pillars now, and all you have to do is just listen to the Democrats, prominent Democrats, and they're expressing exactly what they're going to do. They're not. There's no hiding the ball here. What's going to happen if when the Democrats take power again? And one of the pillars, one of their prime goals here is to remake the contours of the Supreme Court, U.S. Supreme Court. So. Virtually all of when we're talking about appealing the decision out of Virginia, right? The Supreme Court, the Virginia Supreme Court's decision upholding or striking down the redistricting effort because it was unconstitutional under the Virginia Constitution procedurally. Mm-hmm. If you read the Virginia Supreme Court's decision, it's just a procedural. It is purely on the procedures. The Democrats in Virginia didn't follow the procedures for amending the Virginia Constitution. It's indisputable. That being said. The folks who appealed this decision, and when a state Supreme Court issues a decision, there is always the option to petition the U.S. Supreme Court for review of this. The lawyers who were petitioning the Supreme Court on behalf of the Democrats in Virginia, the U.S. Supreme Court on behalf of the Democrats in Virginia, knew overwhelmingly 99.99% chance that the U.S. Supreme Court was not going to do anything with that Virginia Supreme Court decision. And exactly as predicted, the U.S. Supreme Court in a 9-0 decision, uniform, there was no dissent, there was nothing. 9-0 said, this isn't subject to review for us, we're not going to do anything for it. Good try for Virginia Democrats, you lose. Mm-hmm. The reason why the Democrats did that is to have another notch in the belt for another reason for discrediting the U.S. Supreme Court so they can go and scream and yell and say that the U.S. Supreme Court is part of this broad effort to delegitimize African-American voters, institute new Jim Crow 2.0, and you're seeing all this screaming and yelling and caterwauling. And what is the point of doing that? The point is when the Democrats take power that they have the political will to expand the number of justices on the court.
It was 9-0. They have liberal justices. Even they didn't agree with them.
Right. But exactly, and this is why it's important that we talk about it, and that so people are aware of everything that's going on behind the scenes here. This is just an effort to continue to aggravate the base, to ensure that the political support is there when they want to expand the number of justices on the Supreme Court. Why do they want to expand the number of justices on the Supreme Court? Because the Supreme Court is standing as a bulwark for constitutionalism right now. They're not flying with the political wind. They're not in the bag for Donald Trump. Look, the tariff decision is Exhibit 1. I'll give you Exhibit 2 in a couple of weeks. Is going to be when they strike down Donald Trump's birthright citizenship executive order. They probably are going to do that. So there's no objective argument that you can make that says the Supreme Court is somehow for Donald Trump. They're not. They're objective constitutionalists doing their job.
Yeah. And you know what's funny? I don't always like the way that they vote either, but
sure,
they're the Supreme Court. They're supreme. They're over me. They're smarter than I am, too, and they know the Constitution better than I do. But when
this iteration
feelings get involved...
Yeah, let's be very clear here. Previous courts have, again, it's an imperfect body because it's human beings. Nothing is ever going to be perfect. Now, that doesn't mean, do I disagree with their decisions? Absolutely. Will I disagree with their decision if they rule against striking down the birthright citizenship executive order? I will disagree with it.
I will, too.
Did I disagree with Roe versus Wade? Certainly, of course, we all disagree with Roe versus Wade. But guess what? Back to the earlier point. We got to work, right? We put our heads down and we did the work. We didn't scream and yell and destroy the institution.
Here's the thing. They don't understand that the Supreme Court has been the way that it is for a very long time. It's been very successful. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But they think it's broke because it's not going their way. So what they don't understand is this could really flip-flop on them. So they could expand it and then somebody gets in, a bunch of them either quit or die, and it's all conservatives.
Yeah, and also it begins the process. It's politicization of it, right? So, okay, well, we don't like the outcome, so we're going to expand it. Okay, so we expand it from 9 to 13. We add 4 justices. Well, guess what? Republicans come back into power. We don't like 13 justices. We're going to expand it from 13 to 17. There's no limiting principle here. Once you break that glass, in case of emergency, break glass here, not to kind of quote Gavin Newsom for what he was saying, but once you start down that path, right? Again, I'm going to sound like Star Wars. Once you start down that path, forever will it dominate your destiny, right? So, okay, so Democrats decide they're going to expand it to 13.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, then 17, then 19, then there's no limiting principle here, and then it just becomes another political body that sways with the political winds. Mm-hmm. Keep it as it is, do the hard work, make the cases that you need to make, and be successful. Look, how many decades did it take to overturn Roe versus Wade? Mm-hmm. It took how many, 72 to 2016 or 2025, 2024? We're talking 50 years of Roe versus Wade, the most abhorrent decision, well, not the most abhorrent, but one of the most abhorrent decisions in Supreme Court jurisprudence, certainly one of the most important ones in modern times, and conservatives did the work over decades to overturn that decision. Humphrey's executive is another one. That's one that we're going to be looking forward to. 100 years. 100 years to overturn a decision that we find abhorrent.
Yeah, well, so, it wasn't even in the Constitution, so it was an easy decision that took 70 some years to happen. So that's ridiculous.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it took us 50 years to overturn Roe versus Wade. It's going to take us almost 100 years to overturn Humphrey's executive. And what happens though is this is the distinction, and we were talking about this with whining. This is the distinction between the leftist and the conservative mindset. We want to work within our institutions to move the ball and fix the problems. We don't want to destroy the institutions because we know that the framework of institutions instituted by our framers, again, let me see how many times I can reword those things, is imperative to ensuring the preservation of liberty in our country and that we continue to go on and exist as America has existed.
Well, and the Supreme Court is there for when the state Supreme Court has a decision that everybody's all uppity about. So they want to send it to the U.S. Supreme Court to decide, and that's where the buck stops. If they decide that, this is malarkey, we're not going to deal with it, you have to deal with the marbles you have in your bag. That's what you have to do, and that's why they are who they are. It's also why they have the number that they have, so that there aren't ties. And they're there for life. So their perspectives may change throughout their journey in life, but the Constitution does not. And they are there to only bear fruit from what is in the Constitution.
Yeah, and you make a really good point, and I like your light for life. And you can see how, think about Justice Thomas, right? Mm-hmm. So Justice Thomas joined the court in the early 90s, the Bush 1 administration. Mm-hmm. He's now, I think, the second serving justice, second longest serving justice in Supreme Court history. Look at how he has moved the ball. He was, remember, early in his tenure, for years, he was one of those lone dissenters. Did he go out and scream and yell and whine? No, what did he do? He continued through years and years of purposeful ideology. He moved the court in the direction where it is today. So you got to play the long game here, right? He didn't go out and scream and yell that there should be more justices. He didn't whine that, hey, nobody's on my side. By force of intellect and character, for that matter, I mean, he's one of the most distinguished high character people in our country. Mm-hmm. He moved the direction of the court towards his position. And so I think that's the model you follow if you're a justice. So I say if Ketanji Brown Jackson is angry that she's the lone dissent, she can look to Justice Thomas and say, well, this is how he's done over the course of his career, and this is the model you follow. You don't, again, just because you're not getting your way, you don't break everything and then run away screaming like leftists tend to do, screaming and yelling and crying. You put your head down and you do the work.
And you know what? It always cracks me up, too, when it comes to choosing Supreme Court justices, that the left has hissy fits over every conservative who is nominated. The conservatives generally, the Senate and Congress in general, that they decide who gets voted in or voted out. I mean, they have to choose. And it seems like when a left president, Democrat president, same thing, proposes a justice, there's really not that much pushback. I mean, they vote, they move on, they do whatever. But when there's someone from the right, they bring women out of the woodwork, some of them lying, and they go after them like rabid dogs. Clarence Thomas went through hell. Look what Brett Kavanaugh went through. Yeah. So every time we try to get a conservative justice, everybody craps the bed. And the funny part is Trump's got to appoint a lot of them because he gets elected in the years where they decide to leave or unfortunately pass away.
Yeah, and I think it goes to just a fundamental way you view the role of a judge or a justice, right? The conservatives and Republicans generally view the role of a justice to call balls and strikes, not to be a judicial social worker. Mm-hmm. And so when you're a senator, a Republican senator, and you look up there and you say, okay, you meet the qualifications, you're going to be up there, you're not going to be a social worker. I'm not putting you on the Supreme Court to push social or political policy. I'm there for you to call balls and strikes, and that's your job. But when you're the left and you say, okay, well, you're there to advocate for justice, whatever the current view of justice is in the minds of the left. And by the way, that's ever evolving, right? Further and further to degradation. Sadly. I think that's how they view it. And so unless you're going to be up there and you're kind of advocating for social justice, you're verboten, and they're going to destroy you in any way they can.
Mm-hmm. And that's why they do it, because they know you are going to be very constitutional. Now, I've been a little bit surprised at Roberts on some of his decisions, literally kind of shocked. But I think Kavanaugh, I think Clarence, I think most of them have gotten it right on this one, but I don't think it's over. I think Virginia's still going to try to cause some problems on this one, no matter what. So where do people go to learn more about this, Mike?
Yeah, landmarklegal.org. You can check out our website. Thanks a lot, Fawn. Yeah, and you know what? With the left, it's never over, right? It's never over. Yeah. It's always constant, and it's always a battle we're going to have to keep fighting.
Well, we can go out there with microphones and ask them questions about why they are standing on the line for what they're standing on the line for, and they always start with the sentence, because I feel like, and that's when you know they're full of crap. So there you go. Mike O'Neill, Vice President, Legal Affairs, Landmark Legal, Virginia, trying to discredit the Supreme Court. It's not going to happen. I hope at least not in my lifetime. Have a great day, Mike.
Take care, Fawn. Talk to you next time.
All right. Bye-bye.